generation of change. A lot of people say it, and I'll say it too. Gen Z was supposed to be more liberal and they were supposed to be more inclusive than the previous generations. They just had so much pressure and expectations on them because people hoped that they would change all they would change everything and that they would become more progressive. And recent research actually shows something quite interesting related to this. Research from centers like Pew Research Center shows that young women today are significantly more likely to identify liberals compared to young men. And this like conclusion, it wasn't just received in one place either, or like it wasn't limited to like a country or place, something like that, because analysis by Financial Times show that across multiple countries, Gen Z women are becoming more progressive while Gen Z men aren't shifting at the same rate or are even becoming more conservative in some cases. So in a way, I guess, yeah, the just generation kind of is bringing change, but there's this gap between the thinking of young women and young men in our generation. This is a form of what we call an ideological gap. An ideological gap, it is essentially like a difference in the beliefs, values, or ways of thinking between groups of people. And we will be exploring this in so much more depth today. Hi guys, this is Emmy. Welcome back to Who Does She Think She Is? The podcast where we understand the patriarchy, understand who benefits from it, and dismantle it all with a side of tea. It's important to understand that an ideological gap, it's not just two people having a disagreement about something and not having common ground. It is so much more deeper and much more complex. In an ideological gap, people have different assumptions about reality in itself. They have completely different ideas and or beliefs of what's fair or normal. But that's not even the worst of it. Not only does this gap exist in today's generation, it is also growing at a rapid rate. But why? Why are we growing apart like this? And is this divide natural, or is something actually pushing us in different directions? Let's start by talking about something very simple. How do people form opinions? Surely it's not in a vacuum. Your beliefs, they come from your experiences. They come from what you see, what you go through, and what affects you directly. And the reality is the fact that no matter how progressive we've gotten today from, let's say, 100 years ago, we've become much more progressive, but girls and boys are not experiencing the world in the same way. I don't even really need to talk about this a lot because even from a young age, there are differences in expectations that are placed upon young girls and the expectations that are placed upon young boys. There's differences in safety concerns that are expressed, and of course, the same behavior in young girls and in young boys is judged very, very, very differently. So honestly, we cannot even question why there's this differences between the thinking of girls and boys, because why wouldn't there be? If you grow up navigating different pressures, different risks, and different expectations, your worldview and thinking obviously are going to reflect that. We cannot even say that one side is right or the other is wrong because they never had the same starting point to begin with. Their belief and their, how do you say, thinking of what's right and what's wrong is very, very different. So, of course, this gap exists, but it's not just about this gap existing. There's also the fact that this gap is growing day by day. And moving on, one of the most prominent factors causing this divide to grow, kind of exemplifying it, is, you guessed it, social media. We experience different things, yes, but we're also being taught differently every single day. Research for OCOM and Pew Research Center shows that teenagers they spend hours every day on social media. We didn't need research to tell us that either way. But the key detail isn't just the time, it's what the platforms are actually doing with that time. Algorithms we know are not neutral. They don't just show you random content. They track on what you pause, what you like, what you rewatch, and what you agree with. And then they build a version of the same internet that keeps you engaged by giving you more of the same. Not necessarily because it is true, but because it keeps you scrolling. So, over time, the platform stops being a shared space and becomes a personal reality filter. And that's where it gets interesting. Because two people can open the exact same app at the exact same time and walk away with completely different understandings of the world. One person might be consistently exposed to content about equality, rights, personal identity, and social structures, content that encourages questioning systems and examining inequality. While another person might be shown content focused on self improvement, dominance, hierarchy, traditional roles, or narratives that frame society as being biased in the opposite direction. Over time, these repeated exposures shape not just opinions, but also what people believe is normal, what they think is obvious, and what they assume everyone else already knows. Now let's explore this gap in a little more depth and understand some of the factors that contribute to it. Let's take one side and look at it first. Women have become increasingly more liberal in the past few decades. A major reason for this is the fact that now, instead of just acknowledging the unequal systems around them, women have also started questioning it. They've seen the women before them struggle and become a victim to these unfair systems, and instead of simply thinking that, oh, these exist, they've started questioning why these systems exist and who exactly benefits from these. Along with that, women now have much more access to opportunities where they can express their opinions and spread more awareness against these unjust systems. So this kind of leads to a chain of women inspiring and kind of motivating other women to fight and question the unfair systems in society, which leads to more and more women being more progressive and liberal. There's also another huge factor: education. Historically, men were the ones with degrees and the professional power, but today women are outpacing men in higher education all over the globe. According to the 2024 and 2025 data, women now make up over 50% of the college educated workforce in many, many countries. Education often correlates with more liberal social views because, think about it, it exposes you to more diverse perspective and critical thinking about history. This brings us to the other side of the gap. While women are celebrating these wins, more degrees, more leadership roles, more independence, a lot of young men are looking at the same map and feeling lost. There's this concept in game theory called the zero sum game. It's quite simple, which essentially this means is that one person's win must be another's loss. It was formally developed by John von Neumann along with Oscar Morgenstern in their 1944 book, Theory of Games and Economic Behavior. But here we're going to be talking about it from a psychological point of view. And from a psychological point of view, the zero sum game is the mindset or the perspective that people have that someone else's win is their loss, even when essentially it's not true. Now you might be thinking, wait, what does this weird sum game theory thing apply to the ideological gap we're talking about? But it does, because men often view women's success as their loss. Research from King's College London and Ipsos show that a huge chunk of Gen Z men feel that promotion of women's equality has gone so far that it's discriminating against them. I'm pretty sure that's not the case, but whether that is statistically true or no or not does not matter as much as the fact that they feel it. I mean, think about it. For decades, the script for being a man was simple: be the provider, be the protector, be the one at the top of the hierarchy. But if women are now getting the degrees, getting the high paying jobs, and don't need a provider in the same way, many young men feel like their purpose has been deleted. For a long time, success and status were tied to very for a long time, success and status were tied to very specific roles, especially for men. So when those roles become less guaranteed, it obviously creates uncertainty. And that is where psychology comes in. For some people, progress does not feel like progress. It feels like instability or even loss. And this is where the zero sum mindset starts to show up. The idea that if one group is gaining more opportunities or success, another group must be losing something in return. So instead of seeing change as expansion, it can feel like competition. And sometimes that tension it gets expressed in very unhealthy ways, like dismissing women's achievements or reinforcing stereotypes or trying to push things back towards how they used to be. And this is where social media, and especially algorithms, again intensify everything. If a young man feels lonely, economically pressured, or unsure about his place in the world, the algorithm doesn't offer a nuanced explanation. It offers the very thing he's lacking: certainty, often through what's known as the manosphere, online spaces that frame these feelings in a very specific way. It's not your fault. The system is against you. You need to take back your power. And that message can be incredibly appealing because it turns confusion into clarity, frustration into purpose, and defensiveness into something that feels like strength. But it also simplifies a very complex reality. And over time, it can, obviously, as it has, it can deepen the divide. Because while many women are moving towards a future they've fought to access, some men are looking towards a past that felt more stable or more favorable, as we know, to them. So, why am I even talking about this? Why does it matter if young men and women think differently? Let me put it down simply for you. When a generation like ours, it splits so deeply down the middle, it basically starts to affect everything. If we cannot find common ground, we can't build families, we can't collaborate in the workplace, and we definitely cannot solve bigger problems like climate change or economic instability that affects us all, regardless of gender. If it, I know it feels like a massive problems, but big problems, the solutions to all big problems, they start with small shifts. So, how do we actually start closing this gap? The first thing we need to do is to break the zero sum mindset. We have to stop viewing equality as a pie where if one person gets a slice, someone else loses one. We have to move forward towards a world where women's success is not seen as a man's failure. We need to talk about how equality actually helps men too, like how breaking down traditional roles means men can have more flexibility in their careers, better mental health support, and deeper connections with their kids. Next up, we have to outsmart the algorithm. If your girl in your feed is a 100% man hating content, Or if you're a guy and your feed is 100% alpha male, all of that content, you are being fed a distorted reality. We need to be intentional about following people who challenge us, not to change our minds, but to remind us that the so called other side is human too. And then, thirdly, we need new role models. We need more voices for young men that aren't based on dominance or anger. We need positive masculinity, role models who show that being a man can mean being empathetic, supportive, and a partner rather than a competitor. And for women, we need to keep pushing for progress while also leaving space for the men in our lives to grow and learn without feeling like they're constantly under attack. And lastly, we need to get off the apps and have real world conversations. It's much harder to hate someone when you're sitting across from them at a coffee shop. Gen Z was supposed to be the generation of change, and maybe we still are. But maybe the change we need isn't just about being more progressive or more traditional. Maybe the change we need is learning how to stay connected in a world that is designed to pull us apart. The gap is real and it's growing. It's a problem, but it's not permanent. It is up to us to build the bridges that the algorithm won't. Thank you so much for listening to episode 9. I hope you guys had fun, and I hope to see you all in the next episode.